Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's Chris here from the Whistle Stop Cafe in Mirror. I am sorry that I'm late. We ran into a little bit of technical difficulties, and we almost ran into some more technical difficulties here on my side because there is a absolute raging blizzard going on outside. And because I'm in rural Alberta, of course, my XplorNet antenna is covered in snow and ice, and it's not working. But I have a secondary Starlink connection as well that I use in the garage when I'm doing live streaming in there and things like, playing the drums because I'm 46 years old and that's what I do now. Anyway, so thank goodness for SpaceX and Starlink. Thank you very much to my good friend, my dear friend Elon. Actually, he doesn't even know who I am, but we'll be friends anyway. And it's a great thing that we do have that secondary connection because today we have an awesome guest who has been ruffling a lot of feathers in British Columbia. We watched as the Conservative Party of British Columbia went through some turmoil and some MLAs ended up leaving. They were ejected because they dared to tell the truth. And coincidentally, about, I think a week ago or so, the leader of the Conservative Party of British Columbia, John Rustad, he was ousted as leader. So there's definitely some turmoil going on. And what I've noticed is it seems like, at least in the case of our guest, Dallas Brodie, when you dare to speak up and tell the truth, when people have been believing a lie for as long as they have, and they've made emotional connections to that lie, not just emotional, but financial connections as well. When you speak the truth, there's a lot of pushback. And over the last few weeks, I've been following what Dallas Brodie and Francis Widdowson and Jim McMurtry, we've also had Jim on the podcast as well. I've been following what they're doing, trying to speak the truth about what occurred in residential schools in British Columbia and actually across Canada for that matter. There's a documentary that 1BC made while Dallas was the leader of that party in British Columbia called Making a Killing. And I've actually linked to it in the podcast description, so you can find that there. But don't go and watch it right now. Watch it after. Even if you've watched it before, watch it again. Right now, we're going to bring on Dallas, and we're going to talk about how she ended up where she is, why she decided that this is something that needed to be done, and how things are going for her right now. So I would like to extend a very warm welcome to Dallas Brodie, who I'm not sure how to introduce you now, MLA for in the British Columbia legislature, I guess. And maybe you can fill us in a little bit on what's up with that before we get going.
Okay, so yeah, we're having some turbulence in the 1BC party, which is really too bad. But right now, I am sort of the de facto leader, but I've sort of been removed as leader, and we're working through the legalities of that right now. While I and my team are going to be retaking the party, hopefully by later today. There was problems that broke out in our party over the last, I don't know, I guess 13 days. And it's come as quite a shock to me, but it revolved around a staffer that I had wanted removed from the party, and my top team members refused to do that. So he has now ultimately been removed, but because of me putting my foot down on that, it looks like I'm being, that was not an acceptable thing for me to do. So what I'm doing is hoping to regain control over the party and at least continue on building candidates and having things move forward, because I have been inundated with a lot of letters just saying, please don't just quit, keep going. And I'm doing that. And I believe that that's my responsibility. When you do things like this, you can't just bail out when the going gets tough. You have to say, okay, I've made a commitment here, and I'm going to see it through to the absolute best of my ability. If the powers that be want to keep blocking me, then I really can't control that, but I will keep doing my best to regain control of the infrastructure of 1BC. My colleague Tara has left me, so it'll just be me sitting alone, but at least I'll have the party.
Yeah, and that's too bad because, watching from Alberta, watching what's going on there, that was pretty great to see you and Tara, decided to work together and build something new and fresh and start telling the truth about some things that really need to be, some truth that really need to be told. And we're seeing the consequence and the fallout from people refusing to stand up for what's right and refusing to advocate for the truth, in that now there's some legal battles over title in the Lower Mainland, and people are, they're pretty upset about this. There's people who can't get their mortgage renewed. Indigenous groups have laid title claim to great swaths of the Vancouver area, and it's getting pretty messy. And I talked to you a little bit about this before we went live here. And I talked about Bonhoeffer's definition of stupidity. And what I'm seeing going on all across the country is a lot of stupidity. And that is, I'm going to explain it the way he described it. It's not a quote, but it's close. So Bonhoeffer defines stupidity not as a lack of intellect, but as a moral failing, the conscious refusal or incapacity to think critically and independently, especially under oppressive power structures like Nazism in his case, leading people to surrender reason for simplistic slogans and conformity, making them dangerous accomplices to evil because they believe their misguided actions are righteous. Do you think that applies to the conversation around what's going on with the belief about residential schools in British Columbia right now?
Well, what was it? Simplistic slogans and conformity.
Conformity, yeah.
Yes, I do. And remember, the people of Canada were bombarded with this story in May of 2021, right when they were already traumatized from mandates affecting their lives on every level. And the federal government just doubled down on all of this, and the media around the world went crazy. They started reporting, the New York Times reported that basically Canada is a genocidal nation.
Yeah, I remember.
We were designated genocidal at the United Nations. And then UNDRIP was made official law in Canada, which is the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. And the flag was flown at half-mast for 5 months or so. And then hundreds of churches were burned and vandalized. And to my knowledge, I don't think any charges have been laid for, basically mass arson. Now, it was a shocking thing, but people had been, when all of the media tells you these things, I think it's reasonable for people to believe it.
Of course.
It must be true. It must be true. They must have murdered. Because the claim is not a small claim. The claim is that 215 and maybe more children were murdered and then buried in a mass grave. And apparently the story is that it was little children who were forced to bury them. That is a horrifying story, if true, correct? Yeah. And so Canadians were rightly shocked, saddened, horrified by what they were hearing, and suddenly looked back and said, why were we so horrible? And what our documentary does is it talks about what really transpired and what's going on. And what we do know today, 4.5 years later, is that not one body has been exhumed from the supposed gravesite in Kamloops. And in fact, no bodies have been found anywhere across Canada, because so far, up until March, $320 million had gone out from the federal government to various groups to engage in GPR and then digging activities. And then the Kamloops band itself demanded money for its own investigation, and that it was to the tune of $12.1 million. Now, that money was earmarked for digging, and no digging was done. And no digging was done, and the money was spent, apparently.
They did build a fence, though.
They built a fence, and apparently at first the fence was a chain link or fence you could see through. And now, when I went up there for the documentary, we discovered that the fence now has an opaque white sheet or sheeting or something across it, so you can't even look in that direction. So, and they also told us when we were there filming us that we weren't even allowed to film a picture of the fence.
That was you and my friend Drea.
Yes, I was
Yeah.
there with Drea Humphreys, who I want to say was the only journalist in Canada who had the temerity or the sensibility as a journalist to actually say, hold on a second here. Something doesn't seem right here. In the very first press conference they held about this discovery, so-called discovery, the woman who did the GPR work, Sarah Beaulier, who was basically a PhD student, said even then, we don't know if they are bodies. We can't know that until there's exhumations. But in the same news conference, the chief of the Kamloops band, and it's in the documentary, and the head of the, I believe it's the AFN, she's a national Indigenous leader, they both said, there are bodies there, we know there are bodies, and there are bodies. And so it was a direct contradiction in the very press conference. So right there, you have to ask yourself, well, how could you say you know there's bodies if the person who did the GPR already just told you, just right there beside you, that we can't prove there are bodies unless there's digging? And then I guess what happened is the RCMP were going to go and start investigating this, and the band said, no, you can't come and investigate. So this is, when you talk about simplistic slogans and conformity, they turned it into a simplistic thing. 215 dead, their little orange t-shirts were put up all over the place, shoes and all these things, simplistic slogans, and every child matters and these things. And people were just, they went along with this. And then the conformity is that it became very unpleasant for you if you questioned that truth. So people do want to conform. People say, how do you ask the question? It's not easy for me to do it either. It's not easy to say, hold on a second here. There's something wrong with this picture. But Drea, bless her, went up and started asking questions. And I think even till this time, she's one of the only journalists who's done it. And she did a full documentary herself about it.
I remember.
Her documentary. And so there have been some other people who have really been investigated. I mean, Jim McMurtry was, I mean, what they did to him over this is so horrendous.
It's criminal what they did to him.
It is criminal what they did. They ruined a man's life. They took away his livelihood with no basis for doing this, only that he refused to lie to the children in his classroom and tell them that there were 215 bodies. He said, no, children did die at the schools. They died around the schools. They died over 100 and 150 years. Yes, there were children dying around BC. It wasn't just, but the thing is, he was saying it was mostly due to tuberculosis and other things. And when he said that, that was the end for Jim. And he has not been able to work since. He even recently lost a position as a referee for a hockey games because somehow he's harmful to children. And Jim is a man, he was the teacher that everybody loved, you know, like we all remember in high school and elementary school. You can remember those transformational teachers who you loved and you went to, you could even talk about problems with. He also coached the teams, and he's also funny and animated and exciting to learn from. But I think he said he was told, you're a white man and you're saying things that you're not allowed to say. Well, because he said, you have to tell me what I've done wrong. When they marched him off the school grounds. I mean, that is terrifying. Imagine if that happened to you, anybody who's listening here. And then they're saying you're harmful to children. This is a man who loved children. And he was one of the first casualties of this. And then another one was Frances Widdowson, another amazing human being.
She's a firecracker.
She's a firecracker. And I have learned so much from Frances and Jim. And by the way, we've done a couple of what Frances calls these street epistemologies, where you go onto a campus and she wears her thing saying no remains, and she, you know, and she invites people to come and talk to her. And I went with her to two of these now. One was at the Thompson Rivers University, and the other one was UVic, which was just a couple of weeks ago. And we're planning to do another one at UBC on January 22nd. And anybody who's interested in coming and watching what happens and taking part in this, you're more than welcome. It'll be around 11 in the morning, 10:30, 11 in the morning we'll start. So we'll see what happens at UBC. But we have to start getting onto the school grounds and saying, look, there's more, there's another side of this story, or there is a story, and there's truth here that needs to come out.
I have some friends in Victoria. Actually, I grew up in Kamloops, and then my teenage years I spent on Vancouver Island. And I've been back a few times. There was a couple conferences I spoke at in Victoria over the last couple of years, and I met some really amazing people. One of the couples I met, they had a son that was going to UVic, and he said it's so bad at UVic. It's not like they just do a land acknowledgement before a assembly or something like that. It's like a student gives a presentation and they give a land acknowledgement. So you might hear 12 or 14 or 20 land acknowledgements per day in the university, and it just makes me think, like, when something is repeated that often and a narrative is pushed at you that much, how can you not start to believe it? I mean, before all of this, I believed that residential schools were this hell on earth and it was bad for everybody, and the government did these horrible things. And I actually didn't start paying attention and changing my mind until I was speaking at an event in Southern Alberta, and I was talking to this, I describe him as a cowboy Indian. He was an old, I think he was about 85 years old Indian dude, super nice guy, hardcore cowboy. And I was saying, I'm an Alberta sovereigntist, and I was explaining why, from that perspective, Alberta needs to do something different. And he said, well, hold on a sec there, son. Why do you think it was all bad? And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, I went to a residential school, and that's the best thing that ever happened to me. And I thought, well, that's completely different than anything else I've ever heard. So I had a long discussion with him, and I learned some truths that I didn't want to hear because I had already made an emotional connection to the lie. I was already outraged at the lie, and that was making it difficult for me to accept the truth he was telling. And I think that's what's happening with a lot of these kids.
It is happening with these kids. And but imagine how you'd feel if you had been told. It would be like someone, you'd be like, there's no way. And they'd want to tell, like, this is what Mao did in the Cultural Revolution. He got all the kids believing new things, and they would beat up on the older people saying, you've got to change your views. When we were in Thompson Rivers, I have to say there was the core group of people who surrounded us. I'm going to come back to UVic because it's a special place for sure. But Thompson Rivers, there was these screaming people who surrounded us and always tried to drown out conversations. It's very rude, actually. Why don't you listen for a minute but a tactic is always to yell over you or bang drums or blow whistles. I mean, why do you do that? You're actually saying you don't want any other viewpoint heard. But around the outside of what I called the screamers, were a lot of students just sort of watching and listening and going, wait a sec, this is interesting. Watching Jim, and Jim's so entertaining, the kids would yell at him, but you don't know this. And he'd yell back, yes. And it was great because there are a lot of people who, I think even young people, think to themselves, this seems weird. This doesn't seem right. And UVic was for sure even worse. They threw smoke bombs and it got really crazy. But even while I was giving interviews, there were people listening. There were some people following along with me with signs that say, I love 1BC. And people really wanted to hear something else. But UVic apparently is the worst in the entire country on this indoctrination problem. These kids are truly being indoctrinated. It's full blown, it's full on. And this land acknowledgement in front, I mean, think of how much time is being wasted. Let's just, forgetting about the indoctrination, what a waste of school time. I mean, even when we used to say the Lord's Prayer, we said it once in the morning at the beginning of school, and then that was it. But this is now, even in hospitals, apparently, I have friends who are doctors, and every time they go to a meeting now, there can be up to 20, 25 minutes of land acknowledgements. And some guy sent me a whole spreadsheet. He took the number of hours per day that's being spent on land. He's a doctor, and he was going so crazy with this. he sent me a whole spreadsheet about something like 40,000 hours a year is being spent on land
That's a lot of
acknowledgements
money.
in Vancouver General Hospital. And he said, this is wasted time. We could be doing surgeries, we could be seeing patients, and yet we're sitting here repeating these mantras. And so then you ask yourself, well, what's the purpose of the mantra? Why are we doing this? Well, that's a good question. It's to groom you, get you to acquiesce, buy into it. When you repeat something over and over again, it can have that mesmerizing effect and sort of hypnotic, and you're into it now, and you've repeated it so many times. Now, I do believe I'm on stolen land. I do believe my ancestors were bad. I do believe we did horrible things. And am I sitting here saying nothing bad ever happened? Of course not. Bad things have happened all through the centuries. They're happening right now while you and I are on this podcast. There are awful things happening in households just down the street from each of us right now. Yes, bad things have happened, but on balance, Canada has been one of the greatest countries in the world in terms of its treatment of Native people. Its Native people. If you wanted to do a genocide of people, why would you educate them first?
Mm-hmm.
And if you watch the documentary, the chiefs at the time were realizing that the world was changing, and they wanted their children educated. And in fact, it was part of the deals they made. We want education for our children. So, it's not the one-way story that is being pushed on young people today. And I think it's terribly unfair to continue to educate them this way.
It's making them feel guilty for just existing in Canada as a non-native person. I was, I think, 38 or 39 years old. I'm 46 now. By the time I learned what actually happened to the North American Indian before settlers got here, like, I was in the Campbell River Museum and I was reading George Vancouver's log from when he was surveying the West Coast. And it describes being somewhere and meeting groups of Indian people. And he described the village that he had encountered as having bodies everywhere. Like, there was a disease, there was a horrible disease, and it killed a lot of people. And he came to find out that there was lots of people that died, and now it's recorded history. There's no accurate number because they didn't record it, but a huge portion of North American Indians were killed by smallpox and other disease before anyone ever got here. So George Vancouver is describing this. And he's also describing people that were trying to trade their children as slaves. Like, they were offering slaves, trying to sell him slaves. So it describes a culture that was, they weren't very advanced. However, they had towns and villages and they traded and stuff like that. They were engaged in slavery. They had just experienced or had been experiencing a massive pandemic that wiped out many people. And I was never taught any of those things when I was in school. I just thought Europeans came here, and we had a bunch of wars with Native folks, and they got killed, and we took their land. But that's not what happened at all. We met these people, and we were settling the West. The world was changing, and they wanted to change with it. And it's reflected in the treaties. And so now I've gone to the point of reading the treaties and trying to find out the intention and what both sides were looking for. And it seems to me like the chiefs at the time wanted to make sure that their people could adapt and integrate into the society that was going to become the new world. And it seems like they were even excited about it. Otherwise, why would they ask for schools, right? That was one of the things, a school and a medicine chest in every Indian office.
And then from the documentary, you learn that actually the trading post developed when the British pitched up here, and the safe place to live for the natives used to be closer to the trading posts because there wasn't as much violence and stealing or raiding and so on. So they actually preferred. So it's actually a much better and more interesting story than what we're being told. And the whole world was moving around back then. It was a time of exploration. It was a time of moving. The world still moves. There's still people moving around the world, right? I mean, this is how it goes. And so I highly recommend to anybody watching your show to take a time to watch the documentary. It's about an hour and 15 minutes long. And I learned a lot, even just going through the process of doing it, because I didn't know all of this. And when I got expelled from the Conservative Party of British Columbia for posting on X that there were no bodies. And then a podcast I went on where I was saying there's only one objective truth, but I said it in a way that offended people. But it was the way I said it was made worse by a fellow working for the Conservative Party who altered the video to deliberately make me look mean. And I'm not quite done with that. I haven't forgotten who did it and what they did there. That's for another day. But that was a deliberate effort when they were throwing me out of the party to make me look really bad. And I was called a racist. I was called a denialist, and the judicial council. Yeah, that's another word that they have now. They wanted to speed up the passing of a federal law to imprison people for denying the residential schools, and that they called for that because they wanted me imprisoned for saying truth. And so that's also covered in the documentary, and you can see my response in the legislature to that. We're getting to times where when you're being jailed for speech, this is very, very dangerous territory.
Yeah, absolutely. That word is thrown around a lot these days, denialist. Anyone that questions the number of people involved in the Holocaust becomes a denialist. If I say, no, I'm sorry, but the data doesn't support kneecapping our industry to save the world. As a matter of fact, the data says the opposite. I become a climate denialist. In May 2021, when this all kicked off with the 215, I was called a COVID denialist because I refused to let the government destroy me and my business because of the situation around COVID. And then it got so bad, they actually arrested me and put me in jail for protesting on my own property. Yeah,
they did.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah, that was a big thing in Alberta.
Wait, what was the story? You were on your own property?
Yeah, so I own a cafe in Mirror, Alberta, a little sleepy cafe with a seating capacity at the time was 40. Now it's about 36 because I've changed a bit. I went a year into the pandemic restrictions as a brand new operator of a restaurant. I'd been operating 6 months and they closed me down. So I went a whole year. And in that year, I realized, using my own brain and critical thinking skills, that what they were saying was not real. And the actions of the government were not proportional to what the threat was to the people. I started asking questions, and I got to the point where I was backed into a corner financially. And January 2021, I said, nope, I'm opening. I opened against the restrictions. And by May, they charged me 23 times for contravening the Public Health Act. I was in court for, I've spent probably a year in court over the last 5 years. And I put together a protest on my property because the government did something stupid again. I think Jason Kenney said, we're going to be open for summer. We're going to be open for good. I don't know what a vaccine passport is. And then he went back on all of it and closed business.
I remember that.
Or something.
I remember that going, he was doing the right thing. And then he flip-flopped.
Exactly. Yeah. It's a bit of a blur, but I went on social media. I said, listen, I'm going to have a protest. What they're doing is wrong. Everybody show up. And the AHS went to the court, got an injunction against me without me there, because apparently they're allowed to do that because I'm so dangerous. They served me this injunction at 4:30 in the morning with a bunch of RCMP. And then I continued the protest because I'm a Canadian citizen and I have a charter right to protest. And they arrested me and they threw me in jail. And they actually sentenced me. They ended up sentencing me to 18 months probation. I had a compelled speech order. So before I delivered a speech at anywhere I went, and I've probably done 200 or 300 by now, I had to give the government's version of what COVID was and how the vaccine worked.
Come on.
I had mobility restrictions. I couldn't leave my province. I had 200 hours of community service and $30,000 in fines. Yeah. So they called me a denial. They called me a denier. I was a COVID denier because I dared to question the narrative. And I went so far as I interviewed Peter McCullough, Dr. Paul Alexander, Charles Hoff, like all of these guys that were speaking out against the narrative, much like what you're doing with the residential school thing. And they called me a denier and just threw the full
anti-vaxxer.
Anti-vaxxer, all those.
Anti-vaxxer is another terrible name that they devise, or a conspiracy theorist. There are certain names that people get when they're going up against the powers that be, and those are some of them, and that's a shocking turn of events for you. And I actually want to say I'm really sorry, because
No. It was the best thing that ever happened to me, as it turns out.
really, tell me why.
Because I spent the first 40 years of my life politically apathetic, thinking that I didn't have anything to say. I could never make a difference. I had to hope that we were going to elect someone that was going to save me. And now I've realized that it's me. I'm responsible for my future. I decide how I'm going to influence it. And I've built a following. I've done podcasts with some of the loudest anti-status quo voices in the world, and it's completely shifted my perspective on life and responsibility. So I really believe that what the government did to me back then turned me into a man who will take responsibility for his future instead of the boy that I was before, waiting for someone else to do it. So no, it was a blessing for sure.
Wow, that's an amazing story. I mean, my mom always used to raise me, turn a problem into a project, Dallas.
Bingo.
And
Yeah.
and I grew up with that. Like, we all have problems that come our way. I mean, I'm in a problem right now, but do I enjoy it? No. But it is part of life. And you know, getting kicked out of the party, did that hurt? Oh, terribly, terribly hurtful. Having friends of mine who wouldn't speak to me, that had been friends of mine in the party, and being sitting alone, and you know, I was truly shunned. And I was just thinking, what have I done? What do I do now? And yet I realized that it's through the difficult times you really learn who you are and what you can handle and what maybe you've been called to do. And we also are the people who take the initial hits. And I'm not the only. Look what happened to you in that. I didn't get arrested during COVID, but I think of what happened to the truckers. Think of what
Yeah.
they did to Chris Barber and Tamara Leach.
I was right there with them.
I mean, I know Chris. I don't know Tamara as well, but this was an outrage that these people were charged with mischief and have it drag along so long and be threatened with 7 and 9 years in prison. I mean, I was a lawyer for many years. Mischief is like the lowest ranked crime in the whole criminal code.
Which is weird, because the maximum penalty is 10 years. That's strange to me.
Well, the maximum penalties, I mean, I suppose mischief could be something that might a catch-all, like you cut all the hydro wires to the, you know,
Yes.
you know, it might be
Actual
necessary to really hammer someone on a serious mischief thing. But so, you know, I feel like I'm, you know, people like you and others who take the bold step, we give other people courage. And I get courage equally from you, even as I sit here talking to you today, and value you, because thank God you're doing what you're doing, because you're giving me an opportunity to come on and talk to you, and people can hear. And this is how it works. We help each other along this journey.
I really hope that some of the people that are opposed to us will hear this and listen to this, because the reason I shared that story with you is because I've realized that the opposition, and I typically refer to them as the left, because it seems to me that a lot of it comes from the left. I could be wrong, but the opposition tends to dehumanize their opponents, like you or like me. I watched the way they treated you and Jim and Francis at the campuses. I watched somebody got spit on, I believe.
Yeah.
Like they try and put you in this box where you're no longer human, and they make it okay to do things to you or to harm you or to be violent to you or me, so that they can silence your voice. That's what it is. It's not in a university is supposed to be a place where you go to seek knowledge and ask questions and challenge the status quo, but they're not. You know, they're literally dehumanizing people that have an opposing view and silencing them so they don't have to debate them. Because I truly believe if any of those folks, if any of them had debated you, they would lose, and they have to change the way they think, and that's an emotional thing.
Yes, you're absolutely right. They have to demonize you, and you're right. The university is supposed to be a place where you go to have your mind opened up. I mean, I remember getting to university in 1980, and I was so excited to be learning the things I was learning in my Psych 101 class, and and my first political theory course. And I mean, my mind was just exploding with this. I couldn't believe the things I was reading. Honestly, I was so excited and stimulated, and that's important. But I was exposed to different things, and now they're not opening their minds; they're literally closing them down, closed down. You can't say this. You can't do this. You must say this land acknowledgement. You must do this, and you must never do this. And that's so scary. And this is what Frances has been on about. And that's why I've joined her in this incredible thing to go to these university campuses and insist upon some open dialogue. And you should see, they just say you shouldn't be allowed on campus. Frances got arrested at University of Victoria. They issued her with a trespass notice. I was escorted off campus by 3 policemen. I mean, you'd think I was Paul Bernardo. Like
Unreal.
3 policemen to take an MLA who's 120 pounds off a University of Victoria for talking to people. Meantime, we've got crazy people running around stabbing people all over the city, and they've got police. I mean, it's like, it was like the ostrich farm. They must have had, I don't know, 100 cops up there to guard ostriches. I mean, It's all backwards. They arrest, I don't know, the criminals don't get arrested, but the people like us and Frances, I didn't get arrested, but they would have if I hadn't agreed to leave quietly. Frances was willing to be arrested, and so off she goes. And what was her crime? Trespass.
Speaking the truth, that's the real crime.
Yeah, and trespass on a public university grounds, just in a plaza.
It still blows my mind, but I'm actually not surprised, because if you consider when this started, consider when the 215 dropped, the news dropped. I was going through all the stuff with my legal fight and trying to keep my business and all of those things. And all of a sudden the news was flooded, like instantly, overnight, with the 215. Everyone was saying the same thing. And because all of the news places were saying the same talking points, immediately I was on edge, like, okay, what is this really about? And I started reading about these anomalies. And I remember way back then thinking, well, how did they extrapolate a body from an anomaly? It could be anything. But I was going through my own thing, and it kind of blew over a little bit. But at the time I thought, you know what? It seems like they're just trying to distract us from what they did to us through COVID, because it was right when we opened up again and there was a new news cycle, and people's attention spans are the length of a TikTok. And then I realized, wait a minute, there's more to it than this. We just started talking about this United Nations Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous People. And in there, it's basically giving everything back to whoever was here first. Unfortunately, they don't differentiate between who the first peoples were and who the people that were there before us were, because they weren't the first peoples. The Iroquois took over huge portions of land from other groups, but we don't talk about that. Anyway, my point is, there was something else going on at the time. There was these laws, these international ideas that a group was trying to bring into law in our country. And they did. They used 215 as a way to get the Canadian Parliament to agree to amend and change all of our laws to reflect the spirit of UNDRIP. And they did it. Now, I've done since then 4 podcasts with people who are, self-declared experts on UNDRIP about the dangers of what that is. And here we are, not even 3 years later, with exactly what he was saying happening, in that people are losing title to their land because of manufactured guilt that allowed these laws to come in, that's bringing in the spirit of UNDRIP. A little conspiratorial, but it's happening.
No, but it is happening, and it has been happening for a few years already. But it was only affecting places that weren't right in densely populated urban centers. Already, UNDRIP, which was brought directly into the province of British Columbia with DRIPA, which was the mistake of all time. And DRIPA, I mean, things were already bad before DRIPA, but DRIPA made things just orders of magnitude worse. Secret agreements were already being negotiated for handing over, basically creating joint decision-making authority between between the BC government and a band for vast swaths of land that they claimed as their territory. Now, in our documentary, you'll find as well, this affected an area on the Sunshine Coast called Pender Harbor, Garden Bay, Madeira Park. This is a very, very popular boating area for both recreational boating, fishermen, just people who commute back and forth to their homes. Most of the homes in these areas have a dock that goes down from their house, which is critical to the enjoyment of their place. And summers jumping on the dock and sitting on the dock and tying your boat up to the dock. If you've done anything, like a dock is like
sitting on the dock of the bay.
The best. Yeah, it's the
watching
best.
the tide roll away. Yep.
They got letters suddenly saying you have to apply for your dock, and there's something to that effect. And everybody was like, well, what's this? Well, suddenly the local band has right to the low water mark and the foreshore, and they have authority over your docks. So this is also described in our documentary. And so the private, so that was affecting the Sunshine Coast. Then there was the Haida Gwaii, which used to be called the Queen Charlotte Islands.
I remember that, yeah.
And there were some other ththings that had happened up in northern BC, but it had never been right in the heart of Vancouver. And of course, I had been watching the law ever since Delgamuukw and all of these cases started rolling, Calder and Delgamuukw and so on started rolling out. And I knew that it was only a matter of time before it came right into private property. And a lot of people just never thought it would happen. And here we are. It is affecting private property. And it's very scary. And it's freezing things up. And I know some small house builders who are asking me, Dallas, what's going to happen with this? Because my friends say out in Surrey, nothing's selling now, nothing. It's affected people psychologically, because it's affected banks and their views of, well, what is this mortgage worth? That kind of thing.
Yeah. And I want to try and establish a bit of a timeline here. So in the late 1800s, in Alberta it was 1876 to 1899, the federal government sent negotiators to negotiate treaties with the Indians that were here. In Alberta, we did that. They ceded the land permanently forever to the Crown in exchange for certain things. And that's what we did in Alberta. In British Columbia, most of the land, I believe, was not ceded. That's the difference, right? Okay.
Well, I understand. Yeah.
So that happened back then. There were some very good people back then who saw what was happening to First Nations people, and they wanted to help them transition to the new world. The churches built schools. The churches built hospitals. The churches are the ones that had the orphanages and took care of people who couldn't take care of themselves. They tried to help people as best they could. The federal government also did things, not always right, but they did what was right at the time to help people by educating them, making sure that they got medicine and things they needed to hunt, trap, fish, those types of things. So they tried. People tried. Fast forward 150 years, and now the groups of people who may have otherwise perished, if not for the interventions of the people that arrived here, are claiming the property of the ancestors of the people that helped in the first place.
Yes.
Is that accurate?
Yes, I would say that's accurate. I mean, the Cowichan decision alone, it's actually, they claim that they fished there for a couple of months each summer 150 years ago. And that's their claim. And they won.
Wow. I think there was just a Supreme Court ruling that said that they don't own airspace, because that was a claim as well recently.
Oh God, I haven't heard about that one. It's hard to keep up. I mean, this is a mess, and the mess is now at the foot of David Eby, who's our premier, who is all down for land back. Oh yeah, give all the land back, decolonize, indigenize, let's change the name of British Columbia. I've heard the name that's slated for British Columbia is going to be the Coast Salish Territories. We won't be British Columbia anymore. And Vancouver will be having some different name as well. We've already started changing street names. And this is called, so there's reconciliation on top, but underneath it, sort of the dark underbelly is decolonization and indigenization. And that's why you're starting to see names on signs. And so it's to remove to restore everything back to pre-colonial times. But, I say, yeah, but you still want all the stuff. You don't want,
Yeah.
you want the land back, but does that mean, do you still want the stuff? Do you still want the medicine? Like, if you get cancer right now, are you going to use your indigenous people's ways that you claim to want, that have to be defended? And that's fine. But actually, I think you probably usually go to the colonist European doctors' hospitals and what was created there. I mean, you see, there's some hypocrisy in this, is that you can't reverse time to before the light bulb. You know what I mean? Like, you can't say you want it all back, but we have to still keep giving you all the stuff that you say that we had no right to build in the first place, but you like it now. Like,
using the legal mechanisms that we developed.
Well, how about just, yes, using the legal mechanisms that we developed. And the funniest part is that we gave the money to the bands to sue us so that we could give them more money and land.
Yeah.
I mean, why would you fund? Because that, and that is because I think Canadians were generally good-hearted and wanted a better arrangement and a better life for Indigenous people. And I do believe that this literally was, the road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah.
And the more you give and give, the irony is that if you just give to someone free stuff, they sort of end up hating you. Try it in your own life. If you give someone a free ride, they don't really respect you. Like, you just keep giving them charity or whatever. They want, and in this case, they wanted more and more. And I think I get phone calls from people in my constituency on this issue, and they say, Dallas, when are we done reconciling? And how much more is this going to cost us? And what does this actually mean? And that's a legitimate question that I don't think anybody's asked yet. Like, okay, when does it end? Where does it end? It's got to be discussed, because surely it doesn't go on forever. I mean, even the poor Japanese who were interned during the Second World War, I don't think they got much compensation.
Or the Chinese that built the railroad.
Yeah, but the Chinese came over and worked on the railroad. Yeah, and I mean, they weren't slaves; they were paid, and everybody was working their butts off. But they came over to work there, but still, the worst thing that we've probably done in our history is the Japanese internment. That was really one of the most horrible moments.
I saw those in Kamloops.
Yeah, and it was scary. It was a terrible time. It was World War II. It was, and so you can't really judge the decisions of them then, but that is a case where it was truly brutal, and compensation. A friend of mine has told me, who's Jewish, that Holocaust survivors have each received $2,000 each or something, and that was the settlement. Or like, but it's it's sort of done. Like, I don't know how we keep going forward with constantly paying for something that happened before. What about if we're making mistakes right now with our policy, and in 100 years it's judged that we made a mistake about the safe drug supply and we actually killed all these people? Hindsight is 2020, and I think this case is people trying to do their best as they went along, and we've ended up in a ridiculous situation. Well, I don't know what David Eby's going to do now. And now the BC Conservative Party is being called for DRIPA to be repealed. I was called a racist for saying that initially. Now the full party's calling for it. And even David Eby is now saying that it needs to be amended. And I'm thinking, oh, so it's okay when you say it, but when I said it, I got called names. See how it works?
Well, that's politics. What's convenient for the politician at the time, right?
Yes, that's right.
The whole reconciliation thing, we're not there yet, because the first thing that has to happen is there has to be truth. And we haven't found out, well, we have a really good idea what the truth is, and what the mainstream narrative is not the truth. And I want to point something out to the folks that are watching, and maybe you probably know this. One of the first things that the Justin Trudeau government did when they were elected, they actually, I can't remember if they amended it or struck it down, but there was a law since the 50s that said the media could not lie to you. It was illegal. It was a crime for media to lie. That was repealed. Yeah, that was repealed whenever Trudeau was elected in his first term. And since then, we've witnessed the media lying to us over and over and over. And we wonder, how can they get away with this? A good example, you mentioned the trucker convoy. I was in Ottawa. I was doing live streams and podcasts all the time. My family on Vancouver Island were watching very closely what I was doing because they had followed me through my fight with the Alberta government at AHS. And they were kind of like, we love you, but you really need to be careful. This is dangerous. Just wait till we can get our vaccines, that whole thing, right? And I was in Ottawa and I was live streaming and my aunt was watching it in one hand on her phone. And on the other side, she's the Global News or CTV or whatever was on. CTV was saying that we were, basically shitting on people in the streets and beating everyone up and everyone is getting raped. And it was this horrible, horrible, horrible thing. And then my aunt was watching the live stream of people hugging complete strangers and having this wonderful time. And, none of these things are happening. As a matter of fact, it was like the best time ever. And she's like, why are they lying to us? How are they lying? And this is one of those, going to be a great example. People are starting to ask, why did they lie to us? And I'm going to throw this out there. I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat and I'm going to say that there are people in this world that believe that Western civilization should be destroyed. Correct. They believe that human existence, Western civilization, and what was the other one? What was the other one Carney said? It was climate, capitalism are evil, and it's caused all of the bad things. The truth of that is the opposite. Those things, capitalism, religious groups, and energy use, have been the three most contributing factors to the comforts and prosperity we experience today. But they want to destroy it. They want it gone, because if you're going to build something back better, however that better is, you have to first destroy it. And I really, truly believe that what's happening in British Columbia is a consequence of allowing that policy to infiltrate our politics from municipal all the way up to federal. And now we're seeing the results. So regardless if I'm right or if it just is a coincidence that all these things are happening, how in the world do people get out of this situation? How do we get back on the right track?
Well, first of all, I want to say you said that very well. This is what's happening. It is very clearly what's happening. They are trying to take down the civilization as we know it. It starts with even simple things like pretending there's a water shortage in British Columbia. Are you kidding? Alberta. A water shortage in British Columbia? Mm-hmm. Have you seen the amount of rain? Like, we live in fact, we're soaking wet all the time. And people, because the government says it, people go, oh, there must be a water shortage. It's incredible that people believe this, and we have to have a shower that barely drips water out. This is to create a fear mentality and a scarcity mentality. And what do people do when they feel that? It was like, I guess I shouldn't have kids. I guess I shouldn't, and
big mistake. Yeah.
Yeah. So they keep, and so it is an effort to take these things down. And so what can people do? Well, you're doing it. You're speaking about it. And they could call it, what did they call you? Were you called crazy?
I've been called many things.
Okay. So
fat, even, believe it or not.
What did you call it? What was that one?
Well, I've been called fat too. I can't believe it.
Oh, I've been called trans.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. I've been told my hair is too curly. I've been told that my hair is curly and it makes that I'm crazy. Like, even my own team is now saying that I suffer from paranoia. I'm like, this is just incredible. So, but this is what they do. So you have to just push past all of that and keep going. But so what we need to do is really start speaking up against things where you can see the speech control and the mind control coming in. And I say to people, you even if you don't feel you can do much, there are a couple of things you can do. You can start by go to work and remove those pronouns off your email signature if you don't want them there. You don't have to have them. Remove that land acknowledgement from the bottom of your email. Just do it. It's not against the law. There's no law that says you have to do it. Take it off. Remove it. And then the next time you hear a land acknowledgement, if you can do it and it's not too embarrassing, it's not your kid's high school, it's tough, but someone needs to stand up and say, nope, we're not doing that tonight. And I swear the first person that does that, they'll have other people popping up and saying no as well.
Yes, they will.
Right? Do you believe that? I believe that. Mm-hmm. And so, because if someone did it in a group I was in, I'd be right up myself. I mean, I've taken some brave steps, but I have to admit, sometimes I get nervous. I'm at my children's event at school and I don't want to embarrass my kids by being the lunatic mother who's like, you stop these land. And the worst thing they've done is they've made the kids do them now. So you're actually interrupting this long thing that's being delivered by a cute kid. And so that's diabolical. And
Well, they did that in the Crusades too. They used children to shield them from, or apparently shield them from, the attacks from the opponents. It didn't work out well.
Well, so I think that we support politicians who are really having the guts to stand and take the hits and the insults and support them and write letters. There's nothing stopping you from going to a bridge or a high traffic area just with your little sign that says, I don't believe in blood, or I don't want 15-minute cities, or I don't want any more mandates. Just stand there for an hour and have some fun, and don't be afraid. Put on your hat and your gloves. And that's one thing. Those signs, you do that, you can't believe that you got everybody who drives over that bridge thinking about that now. These are easy little things people can do. So what was your question again? What else can they do? We have to just start pushing back against the mantras that are being forced on us. I'm going to be going out, as I mentioned earlier, to UBC with Francis. If you're in BC, come out to that. See what happens. See your own world. Get involved and stop thinking that someone else is going to fix it for you. You have to use your agency. I can only do so much. You can only do so much. We're playing a certain role, but it takes everybody using their agency, finding a little bit of the most bravery they can within their ability, and taking a step to do something. But if you're not doing something, you're part of the problem. That is for sure true.
Silence is acceptance. Here's the theologist in me. I'm going to read this. Jeremiah 29:7 says, also seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. And that's people that are telling the truth are in exile right now. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper. So even the Bible is commanding us to pay attention and seek the welfare of our nation. That means when you see something's wrong, you speak up. When you see somebody like Dallas or Francis or Jim going to a place like UBC and speaking the truth, you go there and you stand with them. You don't have to do anything else. You just go there and you stand with them, because you're counted as somebody that is supporting the truth. And that is extremely important. I can tell you from my situation, I had to stand up and tell the truth about what was happening to my business and what the government was doing, and my opinion about it, which it was wrong what the government was doing. And it was freaking terrifying for about 5 minutes, until I realized how many other people felt the same way and stood with me. And I'm sure you've experienced that too. You said there was that great ring of people around you that were there with their signs of support and listening and watching or whatever. That's what we got to do, people. When you see people speaking the truth, support them. Follow their pages, increase their numbers, amplify their voice, share the social media. That's exactly how we got in this situation in the first place. The people who wanted to promote the lies, they amplified the lies to the point where it was scary to speak out against them. But yes, there are people who are going and getting spit on and blazing the trail for the truth. So we got to support that. That's what we can all do.
Yeah, like John Paul Jones, we've only begun to fight. So we're going to fight. Yes. And I think through every crisis, there's a reason this is happening. It's almost like the universe is saying, wake up, people. Wake up. I'm going to make it worse and worse and worse for you until you finally do something about it. It's like, it's time for you to get out of that marriage. Come on, how bad does it have to get? It's time for you to leave that job. How bad does it have to get for you to finally say enough? And how, all these things in our lives, like, how long are you going to sit there just being abused by your government? It is abuse. They pass laws. They don't even tell you what's in them. They run for election. David Eby didn't tell us he was planning to do land back movement in BC. He's completely lied to us, completely pulled the wool over everybody. If he had run on saying, this is my idea, we are going to give all of the land rights back to 200+ bands that comprise less than 4% of the population of British Columbia. Vote for me. People would be like, what are you talking about? But that's what they're doing. And I call it government by stealth. and they just do these things. They don't tell you what's in it. Right now, they're passing an act that's coming into force in the new year that allows the government to have access to your personal health records without a warrant.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? So guess
wrong?
what? I've had psychologists who have come on to phone me, who are in my riding, who are saying all of these psychologists have been told that all of their audit notes that they take with patients are now going to be open to government inspection without a warrant at any time. Think about that for a minute. And this psychologist has told me already she's had 2 doctors and another person in some kind of profession who said, and they're having spousal attack at home, or maybe they're struggling with some form of addiction, or their child is like, they were coming for help and now they can't go anymore because they're terrified that the notes are going to come out and then they'll lose their job because they're working for the government. And now psychologists are saying, okay, well, what do we do? Keep no notes? But you can't keep track of, say you have 500 patients, you can't remember every detail of what they told you last time unless you pull out your notes. And now, so we have something like 50% of the psychologists in BC are planning to either retire or move to apparently situations mildly better in Ontario, or just leave. And so people who were in trouble and needed help are no longer going to seek it because it could jeopardize their job. And this is happening in real time right now. And so what's it going to take for people to wake up? And this was slid through. It was not well debated. The government invoked closure on it, and which is something, I don't know why they're allowed to do this. They're allowed to just, oh, we stopped now, no more questions, we're done, we're passing it. I mean, really? So that's scary, and there's even more scary things in that. But this is where maybe we are waking up finally, and this is the time. And I pray that people find their agency and say, I can do something, and not feel like they're just a passenger on this ship. You can row too. Yeah.
Didn't British Columbia just pass some legislation that compelled doctors to do what the government wants?
That's the same act. Yes.
Same act?
So for example, I have many doctor friends who are very concerned, and they're actually quitting, and they're going to go to Florida and Texas because they can be jailed. I believe it's for 2 years and a fine of, I'm just going by memory, it's either $200,000 or $500,000 for not following public health officers' orders. So if I'm the patient, I go into the doctor and they know, for example, I've had blood clots before, and some of the vaccines do have a high risk of blood clots. Well, let's just say that's the thing. But they've said everybody has to take this vaccine. The doctor can't say to you, based on your health profile, Dallas, I don't recommend this for you. They can't say that. Wow. Or they face the fine and or imprisonment. And so I know one doctor who simply says, do you think I should take it? Bonnie Henry says you should take it. But I want your opinion. Bonnie Henry says my opinion is that you should take it.
Yeah. They're forced puppets.
So that's, what kind of medicine is that? Like, you have, but in Nazi Germany, the first thing they did was control the doctors. If you do some research on what they did, it was the doctors and then the lawyers. And now, so any right to go to court to question, how come Jews can't sit on a bench at this time of day? Because it didn't start with gas chambers. It started with, you can't sit here, or you can't go to the grocery store until after 5 p.m. Or it was just, there's been books written on this, just saying it was this, and COVID started
slowly turning up the heat.
That's it. And all the time saying it's for your safety, telling the Jews it was for their safety. It's for your safety, so we're putting you in cattle cars. That's because we're saving you. You need to go into the ghetto because we're saving you. And then it's walled off. And then, so this is, but it's like remember when COVID had started with, you stand on a circle, or you,
yeah.
Like I remember
the looks I got for going the wrong way on the arrows, and I did it on purpose every time.
You know, and I was working in a grocery store at that time. I took a job in a grocery store because I was going through something, and I just wanted a normal job, just something to get my mind off. And I didn't want a law job or something. mental work. I want to just chopping vegetables. And I did that. And while I was in the grocery store, it was a Loblaws in Vancouver, and it was during COVID. The manager, he'd be like, customer, Ben to customer service, problem in aisle 4. And he'd be like, oh God. And I mean, what's going on? He goes, it's going to be another fight over the arrows. or another fight of someone not standing on their circle. And like, that was real. I mean, you have to laugh. And so you have to go and there be people, he's not walking the right way. And I don't want, and he's not standing on the circle. And, and he had to explain, look, it's not a law. I can't call the police. It's just you can see how silly it got, right?
That was insane. And it goes right back to Bonhoeffer's theory on stupidity.
Yes.
That was the result of stupidity. People failing to do the morally correct thing and use their own brain. And it results in their, bad things happening to other people and possibly to themselves as well. Absolutely unreal. Well, I got to say, we're just over an hour now. So if you got to get going, I know you're pretty busy. We can, or we could keep going. It's up to you. But I do want to mention, I don't know if you know this, but I am a very strong advocate for Alberta independence. And Alberta is actually going to have a referendum on independence next year. And one of the reasons we're doing that is because we're watching things that the federal government is doing. For example, Bill C9, that's a big one. They're doing kind of the same thing as what BC is doing, but on a federal level. They're going to end up they're taking away our ability to speak. They're trying to censor us so that we can't tell the truth about these things anymore. Under Bill C9, it is not out of the question that you and I could both be fined and jailed and our content be taken down because we say things that are against the status quo. Because of this conversation, because people find it harmful. Like in your documentary, there's a lady, she's standing up, she's got long, dark hair, and she said that residential school denialism is violence and it's hate and it's harmful. Because of
that was Leah Gazan. She's a federal NDP MP.
That's the one. She was trying to make it a crime to deny residential schools. Now, nobody's denying residential schools. Nobody's denying that they, number one, occurred. Number two, there's bad things that happened. Yes, of course there was. My ancestors are from Europe. There was a lot of bad things that happened in European boarding schools back then too. No one's denying that. But what I'm getting at is the federal government is trying to stop us from speaking truth specifically. And Alberta's like, you know what, with all the things that have happened with the inequities of the West and the East, this has been going on for 120 years, 150 years. We're done with it. And I really believe that when Alberta does this, there's going to be a lot of encouragement to a lot of the other provinces, right? Because I bet you at least 94, 92%, well, maybe 91, because I see someone in the comments says that land back is good. 91% of the people in British Columbia do not want to go down this path. They understand that Indigenous and non-Indigenous people, I shouldn't even say Indigenous, I'm Indigenous, I was born here. Indian people and non-Indian people built what we have together.
Yes.
We did this together.
Yep.
It wasn't one side or the other. We probably couldn't have done it without each other, as it turns out. And we should be focusing on that. But instead, the government wants to give everything away and blow everything up, and they don't want to go that way. Alberta is the province that's standing up and saying the truth, that the federal government is enabling these things. And that's a whole nother conversation. But I just wanted to point that out because, it's not lost on me that other provinces in this country are going through similar things, and they need people to stand up and speak truth and fix it. So there is there's the societal thing, what we're talking about, Dallas, where we support the people that are telling truth. We hold up signs when we can. We do all those things. There's also the political avenue. Get involved in your constituencies. That is a big thing. You can actually influence your MLA by being on your CA board, right? And people don't know these things. I didn't know these things until I was 40 years old. So there's a number of avenues.
I didn't know that either. I was not political at all. I was busy, trying to make money and work. And, you get busy in your life, but sitting on the sidelines, just throwing rocks at the people who are in politics that's a useless waste of time. Griping at your radio forget it. It's a waste of time. You're just wasting your time.
Speaking of radios, there's actually one thing Hitler did before he took control of the doctors and lawyers. He subsidized radios. He bought the media.
Did he?
He made sure that his voice was in every person's home in Germany, that everybody could afford to have a radio so that he could deliver his propaganda into their homes whenever he wanted. That was the first thing he did. So.
Well, that's interesting. So sorry, my dog just came in. I can believe that, because he had a broadcast right into everybody's home, and he could make his speeches and people could hear. This Bill C-9 is really, really ominous, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is. It's one of about 5 that are extremely concerning for me, especially as somebody that often speaks out against the status quo,
And we need, even if it's uncomfortable for people to hear an opposing, it's super important. I'm not opposed to other people talking about how much they like communism, or I'm not offended by the person who says he likes land back. He should have his right to say that. That's fine. You can believe in it. I'm not trying to shut you down. Why are you trying to shut me down? You don't need to, we should allow points of view. And that's the purpose of the legislature, is to allow rigorous, vigorous, and ferocious debate in a place so that we don't have civil war and, torches and pitchforks. We want people talking it out. That's why it's called parliament, parlement, to speak. And so I would love to see the universities imagine a debate between Francis Widdowson and the chief of the Kamloops band or something.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
Like, imagine, and let it come, and let it be openly. Come with your mind and listen and assess the value of the arguments. As soon as someone calls, this is something I've learned, as soon as people start calling you names, it's because they don't want to engage. They can't beat you on the argument. Mm-hmm. So they try and call you names, undermine you, question your mental health, say that you're some sex person, or like that. As soon as they start doing that, that they can't beat you on the actual argument. Even Margaret Thatcher says she's immeasurably happy when she receives a particularly hurtful personal attack, because she knows at that point they have not one political argument left. And, I watched do you know who Javier Milei is? He's the man who's turning around Argentina with lightning. Mm-hmm. Amazing guy, hilarious guy.
Fancy hair. Yeah.
Fuelo. He's getting rid of all these ministries and get rid of it. He's so funny. But he gave an interview saying that he's been called a pedophile, a zoophile, something I didn't even know what it was. I had to look it up.
You don't want to know.
Yeah. Said that he's a sexual predator, that he's a phobes of all these things, transphobe, homophobe, and even worse things, that he's mentally unstable, that he's crazy, and that he is, a lunatic, or, anything they can say to cast aspersions on his personality. And he says he's had to just deal with it all, because how do you fight back? No, I'm not a zoophile. Oh, yes, you are. It gets stupid. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. Yes, I am. No, I'm not. I mean, it's not an argument. It's that famous thing. When did you stop beating your wife? I don't beat my wife. Oh, you're right. It's that, but you can't, it's hard to prove a negative or whatever it is. So people can call you names. And that's what I just realized once they start doing that. And I don't call people names. I just say, this is my argument, and this is what I see.
I wish I didn't call people names. I do, though. I'm often inappropriate. I call people names. Generally the R word, because it's making a comeback and it's necessary.
Okay, but I am a politician, and in policy and stuff, it's
different.
David Eby was calling me a maybe if I just had a podcast, I would say that's completely stupid what you're doing, and that's a retarded idea or whatever. But I would also say that David Eby was calling me so many names in the legislature that I finally said, point of order. If he can call me these things, am I allowed to call him stupid, incompetent, financially illiterate? And
good for you.
And I said, and then the speaker was like, everything. and because there are rules against what you're supposed to say, but when they can't meet the argument, they just say things like, you have no right to be in the house, you're so disgusting, you shouldn't be here. And I think to
But
myself, you know what? They say that to me all the time. You shouldn't even be allowed in this legislature. I'm saying, you know what? You're not criticizing me. All the people who really support me hear what you're saying about them. They hear it. We're supposedly the deplorables, the bad ones. And I'm just getting a high sign. Do we have? Okay. I might have to wrap it up soon here. Unfortunately, I could talk to you for hours, but so anyway, the thing is, like, you know, they don't want to have the debate. They know they can't stand on the policy, so they just attack. And I've had to get used to that. It's very unpleasant.
I have two things left, and I'll be quick. The first thing is it effective to try and debate these issues in the House?
Not really, but what you can do is signal to your supporters that you're doing the work, and it's important that you do it. And thank God for Twitter, because you can clip it and post it, because the legislative reporters do not report, like, they never report the great questions I ask. I've noticed that they never report what I do, but my ex posts go viral right away because people want to see it. And then when they see the work I'm doing, they know where I stand. But the legislative think they're trying to keep me down. They want to just what do they call it? Just freeze her out. Yeah.
I'm going to bring up one question from the comments. And the reason I'm bringing this one up, because this is the guy that says that land back is good. It's Dan. He says the government recognized it was wrong to forcibly remove over 150,000 Indigenous children from their homes, families, traditions, and cultures. You should too. Recognizing means doing something. Dan, here's what I recognize. There were thousands, tens of thousands of Indigenous children in the last 120 years in this country that would have been not had any type of a future, lost their parents to disease or whatever, just gotten lost in general. There were people that actually stepped up and helped these children. I have family members that were adopted into our family, native kids that were adopted to our family during the 60s, because the situation that they were going to grow up in was absolutely horrible. They weren't forcibly removed. There were many kids that wanted to go to school. Many families wanted the kids to go to school. Watch Dallas's video, or the 1BC video. They talk about it's saving their lives. Like, people had an opportunity that they wouldn't. So to say this from that perspective, that they were 150,000 were forcibly removed, is completely ignoring the positive impacts of that program. Do you want to expand on that a bit, Dallas?
I think to that, I would say, I really think it's important for Dan to watch the documentary, and also that you need to remember that they were trying to help these kids, and parents were applying to send their kids there. And some parents were so desperate to have their children go there because they couldn't afford to have them at home, and it was a terrible situation. And so, you know, I think watching the documentary is probably the best thing, Dan. And homes, families, traditions, and cultures. Well, I don't think that. I think the idea at the time was to teach them that modern agriculture, learning English, because everybody was learning English. I mean, my father was sent to a boarding school when he was only 7, and I'm sure it was very unpleasant. But there were good things he got there. He learned discipline, and he learned things. And then there were the 100,000 home children from Britain who were sent here basically to work away from their families. I mean, there was a lot going on back there, and there were children all over the place. There was abuse, and it was just, you know, there were kids all over the place there were orphanages. And, you know, there's one teacher in our documentary that talks about how at this school in Sechelt, I think a half of the children went home every day, and a half of the children stayed. And another group were what were called the orphans. They had no families, and they would stay, but they had nowhere to go. There was no family. And so, and she said, I mean, what's abuse? Making kids stay to a schedule. And yes, they had to clean the school. I mean, even when I went to summer camp, I had to clean the shower house. Like, you know, going in. And so I think it's been exaggerated too far in the other direction. And so I'm recognizing that that there were difficulties. You know, a lot of families were having difficulties. It was a difficult life back then. So, and there's generational trauma in virtually every family you look at. Yeah.
So maybe
But I
before,
recommend to Dan, please watch the documentary.
yes,
and then
watch the documentary.
come back and talk again, and maybe in the context of that, that's the best way, because I don't do a very good job of describing it. The experts on there do a better job.
Here's my advice, Dan. Before you subscribe to that notion that an entire group of people, entire religion, and an entire country be condemned as murdering genocidal maniacs, find the truth. You will never reconcile anything unless you have the truth first. So be willing to hear the other side of the story and ask questions. Drea started asking questions, and it led to a discovery that what we were shown and what we were spoon-fed from the media was not true. And if we don't do that, specifically you folks in BC, if you're not willing to do that, you're going to be in for a world of hurt, and it's not going to benefit you or the people you think it's benefiting. It is completely stupid in the Bonhoeffer definition of the word, in that you're failing to do the right thing. It's going to harm others, and in turn, it's probably going to harm you too. So don't be stupid. How's that?
I think Bonhoeffer is right. What a brilliant man he was, by the way. Just a brilliant thinker and a beautiful human being,
and paid the price for it.
And he paid the price for it.
Yeah.
And sure, you know, I'm paying the price for it. You've paid a price too. And yeah, I would say, Dan, definitely seek the truth on that. Start with Kamloops. Just dig into that a little bit, because unfortunately, that lie is causing a lot more anger in this country than anything else, and it's making people say, "Just a second here. We've spent billions of dollars now, and things are still bad. What's going on? What's really going on?"
Yeah, we got to keep talking, folks. A very great man once said, "When people stop talking, bad things happen." So let's talk about these things. Dallas, thank you very much for joining me. Thank you for your time. I know that you're busy. I'm sure it is absolute chaos in your life right now, and I'm hoping that you're finding some joy in it. And on behalf of the people that are watching, at least 99% of them, and me, I want to say thank you very much.
Dan.
and Dan, he might not agree, but thank you very much for speaking up and standing up against the status quo that you know is wrong. Thanks for putting yourself out there and taking the rotten tomatoes thrown at you every now and then. I am supremely confident that the more people get to know your story and what you're saying, that they will be willing to stand with you and support you. And I'm hoping that it manifests in a show of force in the BC legislature. Wouldn't that be absolutely wonderful? So all the blessings to you and yours, and Merry Christmas as well, because 'tis the season.
'Tis the season.
And maybe I'll see you in BC sometime soon, because I got to get out there and visit my grandparents.
I would love that. And I thank you so much for having me on today, and great interview. And you're super well informed on all the issues. It's impressive. And I'm sorry for what you went through back there. That was a tough thing, but as you know, it's made you who you are. And so that's the outcome. And
well, yeah.
Okay.
I'm Irish. I think I like to fight. So worked out good.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I'm a Scottish, Irish, and what else? Welsh. And, you know, for sure the clan mentality. I think we're feisty. So, yep. All right. Have a great day and Merry Christmas, and to all your listeners.
Thanks again.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
Okay. Well, there you go. Dallas Brodie. Wow. Can you imagine standing up against that narrative that we've been made to believe over the last few years? It was a lot easier to stand up against the COVID narrative, the restrictions and all that stuff, because it was that's not a group of people. It's not a specific, well, I guess it kind of is, but it's different. Dallas and Francis and Jim and some of those other folks, they're fighting something that is such an emotionally charged issue. It takes a lot of character and strength to do it. Even thinking about doing this podcast and knowing how some people are going to receive it because they're not going to like what I say, it's a little bit intimidating. And of course, as you've seen, it's not going to stop me because I believe this is the truth. The evidence supports this as being the truth. And if we don't start supporting people telling the truth and sharing the truth, we will not be set free. So I would encourage you folks, even though this is a difficult conversation to have, start having it. Encourage your friends to watch the video. If they have legitimate debates about these issues, talk about it. Encourage them to reach out to Dallas or Francis or Jim and challenge their ideas. If we stop talking, bad things will happen. And we don't want to see that. Have a great day, everybody. I might be back later on tonight. If I'm not back tonight, I definitely will be on tomorrow. Tomorrow, I am joining my friend Sean Newman in Lloydminster, Alberta, to be on his show, the Sean Newman podcast. It's been a long time coming. Very excited to be there. Later on this week, I have Cam Davies, the leader of the Republican Party of Alberta. This weekend, we are joined by Tiana again. You may know her as Tiana Truthseeker. We're going to talk about some of these things and some of the federal bills that threaten Canadian sovereignty and personal rights and freedoms. And also next week, well, Christmas is coming up. Sooner rather than later, I'm going to have my friend David Parker on again. I want to talk to David about what's going on in politics, what he sees happening, the successes we've seen over the past few years, the hurdles that we have to get through in the coming months and years, and just kind of all things political. So stick around. If you haven't already, please subscribe to my page. That helps me do what I'm doing. It helps me travel around and actually have the time to do this stuff. Like the page, share the content on whatever platforms you can. You're welcome to use my content. If you have something in one of my videos and you feel like it would be a good TikTok video, cut it up, share it, get it out there. Just make sure that you please tell people where you got it and where they can find me if they have any questions. And on that note, if you have questions, if you have challenges, I do appreciate it when you contact me and let me know where you think I'm wrong. It's great to hear when you're happy with what I'm saying, but I also want to hear if you're unhappy or if you legitimately believe I'm wrong. Send me an email. My contact information is easy to find. You can send me a message on Facebook. You can post something in the comments. Happy to hear from you, and I'm happy to learn if there's something that I've got wrong. So thank you for participating in the ways that you do. And I look forward to seeing you on the next, I don't even know what this is called, on the next podcast with my face on it, the Chris guy thing. Have a great afternoon, everyone. See you later. Meow. And Merry Christmas.